The following program contains tales of the strange, the tragic, and the downright far out. Some stories may include mentions of death, true crime, or mental health. Listener discretion is advised, but curiosity is always encouraged. Welcome, my strange friends. You've tuned into Strange and Far Out, where trippy tales, true crime, and the human mind all meet under the glow of a lava lamp. I'm Tessyrella, and tonight I'm asking, why are we so obsessed with the dark stuff? I'm talking about true crime, creepy stories, serial killers, the whole shebang. So light a candle, burn some incense, maybe pour yourself a little cocktail, and let me be your guide while we take a far out tour through the darkness. All right, strange ones, let's check in. Let's see what the vibe is, shall we? So this is my mood ring moment where I gaze into my magical ring and reflect on what mood it's serving up today. And she is glowing. She was glowing a deep dark blue, which is, let's be real, matches me pretty perfectly right now. Because lately, well, most of my life, well, since a child, I have just been fucking anxious. But this year, it's kind of just bubbled and boiled over. It seems like my life is exactly where I'd love it to be and always have wanted it to be. But just all my past anxieties just decided to rear its head this year. And when that happens, either you avoid, and have a fucking nervous breakdown, or I don't know. I really don't know the other option there because I kind of had a little nervous breakdown this year. So I am taking care of myself. I am trying to piece myself back together. I have really bad health anxiety. I have overall anxiety and been a little depressed due to that. So if you are feeling the same way, do not think it is bad to try and get yourself help. I mean, it's so easy to find a therapist these days. It's not like it used to be where you could just go to the office and you get who you get. Now there's websites with profiles and you get to kind of choose who you want to talk to. So don't be afraid of doing that. Get yourself help, self-care, bubble baths, hot showers, maybe a fucking joint. Hey, whatever relaxes you. But sometimes self-care is getting yourself a fucking therapist and booking that extra session when you need it. All is valid self-care, if I may say so myself. So again, check in with yourself. What color is your vibe today? Before we dive deep, let's crack open the Far Out time capsule. Tonight's treasure, a true detective magazine from October 1961. This is such a beautifully illustrated magazine. This particular issue has a beautiful illustration. It looks painted. Her hair is beautifully, you could tell it was roller set and just beautifully coiffed. Beautiful woman, red hair, blue dress, and she is on a yellow rotary phone, and she is looking worried. And there are man's hands that look like they are trying to grab the phone out of her hand, and I'm not too sure which story that this is illustrating, but the 4 stories on this cover read: The Riddle of Oregon's Dismembered Brunette. A cold-blooded killer hacked up his victim and strewed bodies all over the county. Once over lightly with arsenic, the witty Indiana barber had no quips to explain odd deaths of 2 wives. The nylon strangler. Los Angeles cops who got a look at him knew one thing. He could run like an antelope. What the fuck does that even mean? And the last one is Boston Stakeout for a 2-time murderer. So there you have it. 25 cents would get you all that back in 1961. Okay, everyone, buckle up because I'm firing up my time machine. Let's take it back to the 16th and 17th centuries. People were eating up crime stories in pamphlets and newspapers. And get this, the chaplain of Newgate Prison, also called the Ordinary, was literally making money by publishing the confessions of condemned prisoners. So over 400 editions were published featuring the biographies of around 2,500 executed criminals. So if you don't really know what a chaplain or ordinary is, it's basically someone that provides spiritual and pastoral care to inmates and basically counseling. So I'm sure a lot of these people that were incarcerated, told their whole life stories to these chaplains and confessed and did all this stuff. And what these chaplains did was turn a profit off of that shit. Now, I don't know if they have the same rules as counselors and therapists and psychs and stuff like that. Confidentiality, I don't know. I don't think that shit fucking existed back then. But hey, these ordinaries, they were making a buck off of it, and I think this deserves its own full episode deep dive. So I'm going to put a little dog ear on that topic. By the Victorian era, true crime leveled up into penny bloods and penny dreadfuls. So imagine Londoners clutching cheap paperbacks with titles like The Horror of Whitechapel. And don't even get me started on Jack the Ripper, because London was an absolute fucking chaos over Jack the Ripper. Here's the psychology part. Victorians weren't just nosy. They were scared. I mean, I think we're all scared still, but the world was changing fast. Factories, crowded cities, strangers everywhere. Murder stories gave them a way to make sense of the chaos. Does that sound familiar? Kind of like us doom scrolling. Their doom scroll was a pamphlet about body snatchers. So same shit, different century. Oh, and theater productions. Oh, yes. They did full-on reenactments of crimes for audiences. It was basically the first type of true crime documentary, only you got dressed up in your fancy bustles and corsets to go and see someone get murdered over and over again nightly. Fast forward to the 20th century. Radio was a radio. That was it. There was, before TV, there were radio shows like Dragnet and Crime Classics. And there were pulp magazines like True Detective. And they sold these exaggerated stories full of drama that, of course, tale as old as time. We fucking ate that shit up. By the 70s and 80s, there were books and there were TV shows and movies about Ted Bundy, the Manson family, the rise of the so-called serial killer. And this is when serial killers were starting, people were starting to view them as these cultural figures. People were watching and keeping up with these trials, and women were writing to these guys, and that will be a whole other topic in itself. And then the 90s. I grew up in the 90s. And baby, we had the Menendez brothers. We had the whole John Benet Ramsey murder. We had Yolanda Saldivar killing Selena. And of course, we had the O.J. Simpson trial. That wasn't just on TV. That was literally a fucking cultural event. I don't know about you, but it's like, where were you when O.J. was getting chased in his white Bronco? What were you doing? I know I was fucking watching that shit on TV. And not only was I watching that fucking chase on TV, I remember, again, pre-cell phone, pre anyone being glued to your own little screen with full access to whatever fucking information you wanted. I had a teacher wheeling in a TV to watch the O.J. Simpson trial in class. I can't even tell you what, excuse me, this is not going to be perfect, people, but it's going to be real. Excuse me. But anyway, I remember watching that damn trial. I can't remember if she gave us an assignment. I can't imagine giving an assignment to a bunch of like fourth or fifth graders and not have them be nosy to like see what's on TV. So I watched the fucking O.J. Simpson trial. Actually, it was the verdict. I remember seeing the fucking verdict in class. So I'm sure that it was turned into some sort of lesson, but there you go. And now we've got true crime podcasts. You don't gather in the living room with your family at to stare at the radio. The way like in I Live Lucy when their TV breaks and then they go and they gather around so they could listen to a radio show. We don't do that anymore. We put on our headphones. We listen at the gym while we're folding laundry, or maybe you're sitting in traffic. It's everywhere, all the time. So whether it's Victorian London or Spotify today, one thing is very clear. Humans have always been fascinated with the darkest corners of our mind. All right, my strange friends, let's talk about it. Let's talk about why we are so into true crime. Like why? Why is true crime so comforting? Why do we curl up to a serial killer documentary the way that we would curl up to like a Christmas movie? Like for real, that's a fucking trip, right? And I really started asking myself why I was so drawn to true crime. And I started asking people in my life, and I took to the interwebs to ask people their opinions and reasons. And things got pretty interesting. I mean, I went over how true crime was documented throughout the ages. I specifically remember my grandmother getting the National Enquirer and the Star magazine. And these were like the fucking tabloids of tabloid magazines. And I was a Selena fan prior to her death. And I needed every fucking thing that existed of Selena, including her autopsy photos. Now, if that doesn't make for a weird fucking child, I don't know. I mean, I went to cemeteries, not playgrounds. So if that just says anything about the kind of person and my upbringing, that says anything about me, but I'm just rambling. I'm a fucking weirdo, and you are here listening to me. So let's get into this fucking topic. And I guess I never really dissected the topic. Honestly, I just chalked it up to morbid curiosity. And that's the reason why I had those autopsy photos from when I was a kid. Being nosy. True crime feels like a horror movie, but there's real stakes involved. Unlike fiction, these stories really happened. So which makes it scarier, right? As I got older, I gravitated to like true scary stories with real monsters. Nowadays, we are naturally conditioned to want to know more details. It's like rubbernecking while passing a car accident. But about murder, right? Like you want to know what happened. And I think that we like to consume these stories while maintaining a safe distance. Psychologists refer to this as benign masochism, which roughly means the enjoyment of watching something that would be unpleasant if it were to be happening to us, but safe when experiencing it indirectly. And you get the thrill, you get the adrenaline up, you get nervous, you get the suspense without actually being in danger. So we get a sense of control because you could also just like turn it off if you don't like it. It's like going to Not Scary Farm. You go to these places, you know that everybody's in a damn costume, but it's fun to get startled. And we actually went last week with our friends, and I was, I'm going to say I had a fucking panic attack while I was there, not because I was getting scared, but just because I'm a fucking weirdo who does not get out of my house very often. But it was really cool. I usually psych myself out before I go to these places, and I end up like trolling the monsters because like I go through these mazes like doing like crab hands type of thing, a crab walk. And nobody really wants to fuck with me because it's like, I'm gonna go scare somebody that is actually gonna get scared, not somebody that's like acting a fucking fool like this bitch right here. And usually they don't fuck with me, but this time I allowed myself to be involved and present, and I let my guard down, and they got me a few times, I have to say. I was wearing a Nobu necklace. I mean, I got it last year because I wanted to drink, and I just didn't want anybody like coming and startling me while I had a drink in my hand, but I still had it for this year just in case. Just in case. I did not want any surprises while I was walking. So that's my little Not Scary Farm benign masochism tangent. True crime satisfies an extreme and taboo side of humanity. And there's the psychology of it all, the psychology of what flips the switch. And I think that is like one of the big reasons why people are so intrigued and fascinated with serial killers, because they want to know how someone could be this productive member of society, and then just what flipped the switch, what changed them. But it's like, did anything change, or were they just really, really good at masking and hiding who they were? Like Dexter Morgan, my favorite fictional serial killer. He is so normal, and he's just so good at blending in that nobody would suspect. No normal person was going to suspect that he was a serial killer. And that's what fucks people up. I think that's the whole intrigue to why people write to serial killers, present company included. I really was curious about what makes someone tick and what makes them do such horrific things, that when I was really, really young, I decided to write to Richard Ramirez. Now, he did a lot of crimes in my area, where pretty much where I lived in Los Angeles and San Gabriel Valley. And it was always something that I would, Richard Ramirez was somebody that just I always heard about growing up. And I heard stories about how my cousin would hide under the table and wait for the Night Stalker. And it was just the Night Stalker. The Night Stalker, that name was so prevalent in my house growing up that I then started, just out of shock value, telling people that he was my boyfriend, that was my man. And I decided to write to him because I wanted to see, what kind of fucking person is this guy? Like, I want a little peek into that darkness. And I did have a couple years where I was his pen pal. I got weird drawings from him. He liked to survey a lot. He liked to send me like literal questionnaires about like, who's your favorite actor? What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite color? What are your favorite pastimes? And he said that he would be a Little League coach. Now, knowing the things that I know now about him. Now, I'm going to preface this with, when I was saying all those things, I was only like 21, 22 years old. And I had never read the Philip Carlo book of The Night Stalker. Didn't get into too many details about the crimes that he committed. Yes, I know that sounds crazy to a lot of you guys, but there was like a documentary series about The Night Stalker many, many, many years after I finished writing to him and he had passed away. And I was fucking appalled. And I really never talked about writing to him. It was only like knowledge of people that knew me back then and stuff like that. And I by no means condone anything that he did and any serial killers at that. I do not glorify them. However, I do think that they are very fascinating to pick apart. I know that I'm not the only person that feels that way. And when I did start writing to him, it was done as a more social experiment. I had just read a book called The Last Victim. It was by a guy named Jason Moss, who did this college thesis about serial killers and becoming the perfect victim, specifically for John Wayne Gacy. In that book, he did mention the serial killers that he was writing to, and he said that he hated to say, but Richard Ramirez was the most charming. So that is what triggered me to write to him. I wanted to be that person that was able to penetrate that fucking fucked up brain, and I wanted to like get some sort of depth from him, but I absolutely didn't. Womp womp. I know it's not very exciting, but I mean, I do have photos that he sent me. I'm sure that he sent other people too. He had strange requests from me. But when I got pregnant in 2012, I kind of just stopped writing to him, and he actually died the next year. So there's a little story about how I was pen pals with Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. But moving on. I asked my husband why he liked any sort of true crime, because he does. He will watch a documentary with me, but he's not exactly a true crime freak, but he does indulge from time to time. So he told me it was like solving a puzzle, which makes sense, since he's the kind of person that will fucking watch 5 minutes of a show or a movie and figure it out. Like, I had to watch Fight Club so many times to even like understand that, oh, Tyler Durden and like, you know, the whole duo thing, he figured that shit out within like the first 10 minutes of watching Fight Club. And yeah, maybe I'm a little slow. I don't know. But I don't know if anybody else does that shit, but I guess a puzzle junkie does that stuff. Somebody that likes to figure out puzzles and solve things. You know, we love following the trail, piecing clues together, and it's almost like putting yourself in a detective role. So, I mean, there's a lot of fun in that. And I did get a lot of responses about safety, saying that listening to stories about crimes allows people to be more aware of what's possibly going on around them. For example, we have the Nextdoor app now that we could just go on and we could see what our neighbors are writing. Hey, there's this suspicious guy that's been walking around. He doesn't look familiar, or I caught this person on my Ring camera. It's like you hear about something that happens close to home and you really want to be hyper vigilant. Our brains are basically danger detectors. I know that my fight or flight loves working overtime, baby. Like, let me tell you, honey, it's an OT right now. It's working fucking overtime. And back, our ancestors, we had to like scan for saber-toothed tigers, and now we scan for creepy fucking white vans with their lights off at night. So with that being said, you could say that listening to true crime is like running safety drills. Here's the kicker. Some folks, myself included, find true crime soothing. Yes, even cozy. Like, sure, my life's a mess, but at least I'm not on Dateline, you know? Maybe at least I'm not under a fucking, like I said, under a bed, hidden in a box for 7 years. I watched a documentary called like The Girl in the Box or something like that. At least I am not there. You know, it's like smoking a joint and realizing the monsters are out there and not in your living room. And somehow that makes all of our worries feel a little lighter. And then some people told me that they can just zone out while they listen. I mean, it's not like the stories about violence and murder are exactly the same as a vacation to escape every day, but it is a form of escapism in a strange way. It could be comfort for our own fears and anxieties. I know that when I sit down to watch a documentary or press play on a podcast, I'm prepared to dive deep and get lost in the details of the story and forget about whatever shit's going on just for the duration of the episode. So yeah, that's why we love it. It's survival instinct, it's curiosity, it's justice, it's morbid curiosity, wrapped in empathy, and sprinkled with a little dark humor. So this is Tessyrella signing off from somewhere strange and far out. Until next time, keep it weird, keep it kind, and don't forget your flashlight.